Greatness isn't built in a single moment, but through countless small choices made over time. It's the secret persistence of doing the boring things, showing up, practicing, repeating the basics, that stacks up into something extraordinary. Every tiny action, no matter how mundane, adds to the growth and sharpness of skills. But in the end, it's the accumulation of these seemingly insignificant moments that separates those who succeed from those who don't. So embrace the process, because consistency in the small things is what turns dreams into reality. Hey everybody, welcome back to MSB Flight. Today I'm sharing my experience with the Aeroscout by Hobbyzone as a beginner. Most reviews you'll see of this plane are by experienced pilots. And while those are really helpful, I want to tell you what it's like to fly this as an inexperienced pilot. If you're a beginner or even thinking about getting into the hobby, this video might help you decide if the Aeroscout is right for you. The Aeroscout is incredibly easy to assemble. It took me longer to build the battery adapter than it did to put the plane together, mostly because I'm disorganized and had a hard time finding the parts needed to build the battery adapter, but that's not why you're here. For a bit of context, I've been flying RC planes for just about 7 months, so I'm still fairly new at this, but I've learned a lot along the way. One thing I can say about the Aeroscout is that it has been incredibly forgiving, almost too forgiving. What do I mean by too forgiving? One of the things that stood out to me the most is just how much this plane floats in the air. It almost feels like it doesn't want to come down, especially when it's in safe mode. Seriously, every time I came in for my final approach, it took me multiple passes to get it on the ground. It just kept floating, and I'd overshoot my landing. But if I chopped the throttle and came in for a dead stick landing, I was able to get it slow enough to hit my mark, eventually. Timing is really important. Not just with this plane, but any plane. I noticed when I nosed the plane down to begin my descent, it's really easy to be too high or too close to where you want to land. And I ended up with too much speed, so I had to go around again. But after 4 or 5 passes, I got the timing right and I started hitting my mark. The landing gear is really strong and the plane is light enough that it can take some pretty hard contacts with the ground. It doesn't stall easily, if at all. This makes landing so much more forgiving and it gives you a lot more confidence, especially when you're learning the ropes. It's almost like the plane has a built-in parachute you can't see. I've even cut the power and given it full back elevator and held that until it touches down. Not smooth, but the plane can definitely handle it. Check out Model Aviator's channel. He has a landing video with the Aeroscout and does a much better job explaining these characteristics. Even though I've had my fair share of overshooting landings, it's still one of the easiest planes to bring down when you're ready to land. But don't think this is how all planes fly when you're ready to get your next one. Chances are there'll be a learning curve, so pretend like it's your first plane and you're starting over from scratch. Now let's talk about the gyro settings. I've been flying it mostly in safe and stabilized mode, which uses the built-in gyro system. At first, I was kind of surprised by just how easy it makes flying. If you've flown anything before, it almost feels like the plane is doing the work for you. It keeps everything nice and stable, and you don't have to worry about any sudden turns or stalls. It's almost like the plane's got your back, making for a super smooth flying experience, even for someone as new as me. But even when you turn the gyro off and fly it in manual mode, the Aeroscout is pretty easy to control. Though I don't recommend this for your first few flights. It's not as automated, of course, but it's definitely not a hard plane to fly. That said, you do need to remember that it won't land itself, even if it feels like it. You'll probably need some left and right aileron input to keep it on the runway. You've still got to pay attention, especially when you're landing. So maybe land with the gyro in full safe mode for a while before venturing into the less stabilized world. Even with AS3X, which is the medium stabilized mode, I almost sent it straight into the side of a building. To sum it up, the Aeroscout is a fantastic plane for beginners. Whether you're flying with the gyro on or off, it's easy to control, but it does require your full attention until you become a really proficient pilot. It floats in the air like no other plane I've flown, And with its easy flare and stability, you get the hang of it in no time. So if you're just starting out and looking for a plane that's forgiving yet still teaches you important skills, I definitely recommend the Aeroscout. It's an amazing way to get into the hobby and still have fun as you learn. Replacement parts are pricey if you crash, which is pretty likely if you've never flown before, but they are available, unlike some other models. An RC Flight Simulator is a great way to start, so you can learn the controls prior to trying your hand at a physical plane. If you have an Aeroscout, I'd love to hear about your experience with it the first time you took it up. Did you find it super stable? Did you find it floated like I did? Let me know. Thanks for watching, and make sure you go out and have the adventure of a flight time.